Good evening. Welcome to the Black HERstory Month Representation Matters panel. I'm Dr. Rashida Harrison, and I'll be your moderator for tonight, and hopefully you'll be able to hear me throughout the night. I'm from the East Lansing area, where I'm an assistant professor in the James Madison College at Michigan State University. I'm so happy to be here tonight, having the opportunity to be in conversation with some dynamic Black women that are doing great work for a number of communities in Michigan, including Black communities. I'd like to offer a heartfelt thank you to Michigan Women Forward and the Michigan Women's Commission for seeing the importance and value of a program dedicated to the experiences of Black women changemakers. Before we begin, I just want to remind us all of this rare opportunity and offer ways of engaging with the panel. For us panelists, we might unmute ourselves. We have a diverse audience tonight, and I hope that if you are able to identify with some of the experiences and sentiments as a Black woman, or maybe woman of color, that you find validation and inspiration, and are able to find other women in your circle in which to continue conversations, because there is power and learning opportunities that we can have when we engage and come together. If you don't identify as a Black woman, you might be unfamiliar with or may have some skepticism about particular experiences and paths discussed tonight, particularly if you identify with the majority culture. We hope that you take this as an opportunity to listen, learn, and grow, as well as continue conversations in your professional and social environments. Focus on how to be supportive to Black women and other women of color in your various sectors. Our experiences are varied. However, there may emerge some common themes that are both the cause of structural barriers and inequalities, but also of our collective commitments to persist and find joy. The panel is not meant to be a spectacle, but rather a space to share both successes and challenges, and reflect on the ways we carve out space for self and community care, as well as rest. So thank you, and feel free to have productive conversation if you're joining us in Facebook, on the Facebook chat, keeping in mind the significance of this platform, where Black women are the authority in their own experiences. I want to take a moment to remind you of who's here tonight. First, we have myself, of course. We have Alexis Dishman, who is the CLO of Michigan Forward. Carla Walker-Miller, who's founder and CEO of Walker-Miller Energy Services. Faye Nelson, Director of Michigan Programs at the Kellogg Foundation, as well as a commissioner for the Women's Commission. And Dr. Joneigh Khaldun, the Chief Medical Executive for the state of Michigan and Chief Deputy Director of Health in the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. I also want to offer just a little bit about the format tonight. So the panelists, we were given a list of questions for us to think about, and they roughly cover 3 categories, including paving our way, our path to our career, overcoming challenges, and taking care of ourselves for a productive future. As moderator, I'll pose questions and panelists will answer and contribute as they like, but we may not all speak to every single question. I'm hoping to facilitate as much of a conversation as possible. So there may be a few times where I actually throw out 2 questions at a time for discussion. We'll all actually start by answering the same question and giving an introduction of ourselves. And we'll do that shortly. But first, I'd like to invite Alexis Dishman to say a few words on behalf of Michigan Forward, followed by Faye Nelson, who will greet you on behalf of the Michigan Women's Commission.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. Since its inception 34 years ago, Michigan Women Forward has been focused on eliminating the barriers that negatively impact the lives of women in the state of Michigan. As the organization has evolved and grown, the mission has evolved to expand economic opportunity, empower the next generation, and celebrate and honor the accomplishments of women. At Michigan Women Forward, we carry out our mission by creating access to capital through our loan and technical assistance programs, mentoring the next generation through our girls programs, and honoring women torchbearers through our Women of Achievement and Courage celebrations. This evening's conversation is one more example of MWF moving forward its vision to create an inclusive economy for the state of Michigan so that all women and girls can reach their full potential.
Well, good evening, everyone. The Michigan Women's Commission was established by statute in 1968. The commission's mission is to survey the women of Michigan, to identify problems they face, to make policy recommendations to address these problems, and to recognize the achievements of the women of Michigan. The commission has been quite busy over the last several years. In late 2019 and early 2020, the Women's Commission engaged in conversations with women across the state everywhere they went, from Traverse City to Detroit and Grand Rapids to Flint. The women of Michigan informed that economic security issues were their priority. The women also asked that the commission be aware and address any implicit bias that may affect our policy recommendations. So to that extent, the commission created the Committee on Implicit Bias, an internal oversight committee to provide ongoing learning opportunities for commissioners to identify, to acknowledge, and minimize implicit bias in themselves and within the Michigan Commission. The commission also partnered with the Michigan League for Public Policy to share their 21-day racial equity challenge and created learning cohorts and listening sessions that over 200 women have participated in to date. Now, a couple of quick facts that will be quite relevant as we reflect on this evening's conversation. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, Black women experienced the steepest drop in labor force participation and have had the slowest job recovery since January 2020. In January 2021, close to 1 million fewer Black women were employed than in February 2020, a decrease of 9.5% since COVID hit our community. Keeping all of these facts into consideration and others, the Michigan Women's Commission is committed to policy solutions to assist more women to join the workforce and at higher wages. This is imperative to the recovery of our economy and to the economic security of our families. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alexis and Faye. All right, so now I'd like to introduce the first question and ask that we answer. Why does the representation of Black women matter? And how has the representation of Black women mattered to you in your sector? I'd like to invite us to answer the question, beginning with Dr. Khaldun. I'm sorry. Next, Carla, Alexis, Faye, and then I'll answer and bring us into the first set of questions.
All right, well, good evening, everyone, and just really excited for the conversation this evening. I want to, of course, thank the Michigan Women's Commission and Michigan Women Forward for organizing the event. So I would say that, the representation of Black women absolutely matters. It matters in my field, which is medicine and public health. It matters, quite frankly, what we've seen over the past year. It's a matter of life and death. When you have people who work in healthcare who represent the people who they are treating and taking care of and trying to make recommendations for when it comes to maintaining health and staying alive, quite frankly, when it comes to COVID-19, I think it absolutely is important. It's been an honor for me for the past over a year to both respond to the COVID-19 pandemic in a leadership role, but also to treat patients on the front line at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit. And I can tell you, when my patients see me and they see that I'm from the community that they are from, and that I understand their experiences, I think they take things more seriously. And they understand that I also am coming from a place of empathy and understanding. So I think representation is absolutely important. And I'll also say it's important in my field because there's not a lot of Black people or Black women especially who are represented. And so when I am teaching medical students residents and speaking to them about some of the challenges that we see in the emergency department. I think I bring that perspective of how to think about different cultures in a way that promotes health and understanding. So I think representation is absolutely important.
Absolutely. I'm Carla Walker-Miller, CEO of Walker-Miller Energy Services, and I obviously absolutely agree. When we're absent from rooms, then we're not just denied the opportunity to excel. We are denied the ability to make any type of impact that is informed by our own voices. We're denied the ability to tell our own stories. And it's so important that we hear stories of Black women by Black women. But we're also denied the opportunity to bring other people in the room. There's one thing that can be said about Black women. We are caregivers. We are uniters. We are movers and shakers. And when we get in the room, we don't just bring Black women into the room. We bring sanity in the room. We bring ability into the room. We bring empathy. We bring compassion, and we bring everyone with us. And everyone should have an opportunity to participate in every room. When we're not in the room, then there's a void there. And when that void is there, people create their own narratives about why we're not there. And those narratives often involved us not being smart enough, not being aware, not being interested enough, not being capable. And the only way we can disrupt those negative narratives that make us less than is by being there, by being visible, by being vocal, by being effective, but also by being open, by being welcoming, and by making everyone else understand. I'm in the energy efficiency services industry. There are so few Black people and so few women and so few Black women in energy, which is one of the fastest growing industries in the country right now. And the opportunity for an on-ramp for great salaries, great careers, and really to retrofit and re-envision what the future of this country looks like. And we need the voices of Black women in these rooms. We need everyone's voices, and Black women are poised to bring everyone in.
Good evening again, everyone. Once again, I'm Alexis Dishman, Chief Lending Officer at Michigan Women Forward. I couldn't agree with you more, Carla. Having our voice at the table, having our voice in the room, leading with equity is so critically important. For me in particular, in the financial services industry, in finance, in banking, throughout my career, oftentimes I have been the only person in the room that looks like me, or is even my age, or is even African American. And it has been extremely important as we're thinking about creating more equity in obtaining capital for our voice to be in the room as African American women. We have an opportunity to create more wealth for our families, to help sustain our families, as historically we have been the backbone of our families oftentimes. And having access to capital is extremely important as we think about how we're going to move our families forward. So having African-American women at the table, particularly in finance and banking, creates an opportunity for those that may or may not have the opportunity to access capital to access it. It also creates space for the conversations around why historically we have not had an opportunity to access capital, and where maybe there may have been some deficiencies or opportunities for growth within our community. And if you don't have someone at the table that's able to share that information, it's very difficult for changes to take place.
And good evening again. I couldn't agree with all of my sisters on this panel with regard to the importance of Black women being represented at the table, in the room. I represent also this evening the philanthropy sector. Now, my portfolio at the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, which is an international organization with a racial equity focus, is to oversee the grant making associated with operations from all over the state of Michigan, which includes not only funding statewide, but also funding in what we call our priority places, Detroit, Grand Rapids, and Battle Creek. And let me assure you that being a Black woman in philanthropy makes a tremendous difference, especially when you're dealing with such critical systemic issues that center on race and that impact our Black and brown communities. Think about this, such as jobs that pay a living wage, workforce development, training, equity in education, affordable housing, maternal health, childcare. I could go on and on and on. And being at that table and being able to have a voice in the decision making in terms of how major dollars are spent, what organizations receive funding, and how much is a pretty big deal. And it's so important because there are not that many Black voices or folks who look like me that are in the room. Think about the statistics that I shared earlier. Close to 1 million fewer Black women employed in January 2021 as compared to February 2020, with most of these women working these frontline jobs that were hard hit in the pandemic, as a result of the pandemic, rather. Jobs that required one to show up in person, couldn't virtually participate, low-paying jobs often lacked paid sick leave. Philanthropy is also always, or generally rather, that sector that sets out to, I would say, mitigate inequality. So when understanding the demographics of philanthropy, of individuals that work in philanthropy, most of them don't look like me. Most of them don't. And if you reflect on the importance of a diverse table of individuals that possess this responsibility, the decision-making authority philanthropy provides, equipped with significant monetary resources, is imperative that we see a diverse table. So with all of the challenges that our communities are facing today, exacerbated by COVID, representation of Black women in this sector, representation of people of color in this sector is critical, and it matters.
Absolutely. And I'll just share a little bit about representation mattering for me in academia. First, I'd like to just thank all of you for sharing. I completely echo, and I'm sitting here just nodding, just feeling what you're saying. For me, representation matters because I didn't know what was possible until it was shown to me. I went to, as an academic, I went into undergrad as pre-med. I came from a working poor family in the South Bronx, and medicine was my way out, or I thought. I didn't understand the range of possibilities until I got to undergrad. And I realized there were fields that spoke to not only my specific experience as a young Black woman in the South Bronx, but also to the issues I was passionate about. It was there that I found myself excited about the discipline of sociology because it helped give me some tools to understand the things I felt most deeply about. And that's the histories and experiences of Black people in this country, with a focus on Black women. While there, I was lucky to be a part of a historical Africana studies department. But even there were only just my whole experience in undergrad, I can remember 3 Black women faculty members I came in contact with, and 2 that I actually took for classes, And then the field, specifically in African American studies, was still overwhelmingly male in the late 90s, right, and early 2000s. When I chose to go to graduate school to pursue a PhD in African American studies, I knew I wanted to do Black feminist work, but all my mentors really were men, right? And when I finally did come in contact with Black women, and there were still few in graduate school, but Black women that I could work with, or that just represented someone that I could pursue an intellectual path along with, I was elated. As a Black feminist teacher and scholar, experience is so crucial to the knowledge production process. And knowledge is not gained in isolation. So it's actually crucial to have other Black women in my sphere in order for me to be my best professional and personal self. And that's something I learned early on in academia. So representation is just like everything for me. So with that, I'd like to just have a shift and talk a little bit more broadly about our personal experiences, to add on to our personal experiences that we started with. And so this first set of questions, I'd just like us to think, reflect a little bit on our career path. And I'll just throw out the first two questions and we can sort of answer them together. How and when did you decide to pursue your professional career? And I know some of us talked about that already. And did you know Black women in the field you were pursuing? How did you reach out to them, contact them, find mentors? Or if you didn't know, did anyone know?
I was gonna get started. So when I decided to pursue a career in finance, I did not know anybody in finance. I was originally going to go to law school, and I was in the business school, and I was pre-law, business administration, and someone in the business school said to me, you need to define what it is you want to do a little bit better. So I went to the Career Placement Center, and I knew I liked mathematics, and I also liked to talk. So I kind of figured finance did a little bit more for me than accounting, so I went the finance route. But I had no idea of anyone that was in finance. And when I got into finance, I had my first internship. One of the persons that I interned with was an African-American woman, but she was in corporate, not commercial lending. And when I got into commercial lending, I looked around the room and did not see hardly any African-Americans, only one other African-American who has mentored me throughout my career. And it has certainly been a challenge at times. I will say, and I think that as a result of that challenge, it is incumbent upon me to make sure as I see women in finance that I lift them up also. Not having the opportunity to look around and see other women and figure out how to emulate or how to act or how to behave at times left me not really being my authentic self, which is unfortunately a barrier, that oftentimes women face, particularly African-American women, and that can be stressful to not have the opportunity to be your authentic self. But what I can say is that, as I look around now, I see more women in the field of finance, but I still feel it's extremely important to make sure that we are lifting and uplifting and really sharing with everyone that is coming behind us some of the things that we face to make sure that they feel good and feel comfortable in the spaces that they're in.
Absolutely.
Maybe I can build upon that, and I'll even go much earlier on in my life, even back to high school. In my experience, and I grew up in Ann Arbor, my experience I remember early on was being good at math, being good at science. I would get placed into these advanced classes where I was often the only African-American in the class. And I really struggled in the very beginning. I wouldn't speak up. When I knew the answer to something, I wouldn't raise my hand. I remember there being times when I would get the top score on a test, and I would just want to hide. I want the teacher to not say that it was me who had the top score. I think it was really intimidating for me to be the only Black person in these classes. And it even continued when I went to college, when I was in honors classes. University of Michigan, 500 people in an honors class, and there were no other African Americans in the entire lecture hall except for me. And I really struggled with my confidence, with knowing that I could speak up, with not being afraid to say something wrong because the weight of the entire Black race was on my shoulders, and everyone would think that, I was stupid. I mean, I really struggled with that early on. And even when I went to medical school and into residency, and I'll tell you, it was one particular mentor that I had when I was in medical school who pulled me aside one day and said, hey, I know this stuff. I know because we talk on the side and you have a lot of good things to say. You've got answers. You really need to make sure you're speaking up and make sure you bring your confidence. And I think that's really important that we, and this was an African-American male mentor that I had, who was also an emergency medicine resident. I think it's important that we help other young Black and brown children understand that they may be alone, but it's okay. They can still speak up. They're worthy of being in the room. And when we get to where we are, we also have to bring others along and help them, the next generation, so they can be confident in their fields.
And Dr. Khaldun, I want to expand on that. It's not just children we need to help find their voices. There are grown women who have been in these rooms for a long time. I feel that I have really only in the last few years found my voice. I really grew up in a generation where I was trained to know that I had to be better, but that my work would speak for itself. And my work was saying absolutely nothing because people were not listening. So until I decided to step out and really engage, really, as you were talking about, take the risk of having the light shine on me and perform in the open, as opposed to the way I was trained. As I said, keep your head down, work hard. People only recognize you if they expect you to be great. And when I started my career in the 80s. And when I tell you that not only was I not, there were very low expectations. Even when I performed, it was attributed to something other than me being good at what I did. I was constantly told, and this still sticks with me, that being a Black woman engineer, I had it made. So through the decades in corporate America, white men literally had this sense that I had an advantage over them because I was a Black female engineer. They had affirmative action drilled into them, that I was there because I was Black female, as opposed to them being there because they were good engineers or, landed a job. So the trauma of literally being tested every day and having to work to dispel the mythology has really driven me to have an assignment to bring Black women into every room I'm in, to not judge whether they belong, because white men are in rooms just by virtue of knowing that the room exists and knowing, being invited into rooms. And we have to have the confidence to just invite good women into rooms, to pave the way for their voices to be heard without us judging them and requiring that they be better than everyone else.
Faye, I just want to have you unmute yourself.
Okay, so there you go. You're not by yourself.
We covered.
Well, I was just saying all these great things about you, Carla, and this heavy duty information that you're sharing. But I'm saying that I couldn't agree more. I again, over the years, I have been far too often the only one. And that gets tiring. I'm a lawyer by training, from practicing law to leading a major nonprofit to being a senior corporate executive. And it's always the case where you are always tested. You're always challenged. But you have to keep moving on. Your voice is so, so important. And I really think at the end of the day that when I reflect on all of what I have been able to accomplish, it's not good enough unless I'm able to bring another person with me and to be able to share and to be able to pay it forward in terms of all of the support that has been provided to me. And a lot of support has been provided, make no mistake. But I really think at the end of the day, it's so important for us to share our voices and to make sure that not only that our support is not only an encouragement, but information. And I want to go back to the point that I made earlier in terms of philanthropy and the fact that having more Black voices in that space, having more people of color, their voices in that space is so critically important. The data that I had, and I was looking just in preparing for this evening's panel, the data shows that 92% of foundation presidents and 83% of full-time staff members are white. And to be honest, think about it, peer networks, understanding the community, common experiences, board composition, all of that makes a difference when you are making these grants to communities where we live and serve, many of the communities that are brown and Black communities, in addition to communities in general. You know, the Detroit region is such an aberration in the sense that there are a number of Black women that are in the foundation community space. The Skillman Foundation, the Kresge Foundation, Balmer Foundation. And at Kellogg, very, very privileged to have just an amazing dynamic sister who heads the Kellogg Foundation, LaJune Montgomery Tabron. And it's also quite an honor, again, for myself in the sense that I'm able to lead this effort here in Michigan. But I have to tell you that, this is the important information that we need to be sharing with our sisters, that we need to be sharing with women, period. That this is where there's so much opportunity for us to be better and to do good and to lift up our voice in areas that are absolutely critically important. And if we reflect on the impact that COVID has had on all of our communities, just think about what you would be able to do if you were in that room at the table making these types of decisions. So, again, there were, even with the number of women lawyers that exist today, I still sometimes feel that we are just a bit of a unicorn because every room that we walk in, it always seems to be like, so how'd you get there? But, we keep it moving, we move forward. But I think it's also so important to be able to share information that you may not know about. And again, from my perspective, when I got into philanthropy, and I haven't been in philanthropy that long, I would say about 7 or 8 years, it was like a aha moment. It was like, are you kidding me? So it's a great place and space that I encourage. I think that having women represented, having women of color represented, having Black women represented is so critically important.
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to say that it is a little difficult moderating because I am soaking in all of what you all are saying, as well as reflecting on my own experiences and hearing it in what you're talking about. Dr. Khaldun, when you talked about your experience in high school, moving to college, that was me in college. I went to Cornell University for undergrad, and I did not talk in class. Outside of my Africana classes, any of my other classes, I felt so intimidated. I did not talk for the first 2 years of college. And when I tell students that I mentor this, they're surprised because I'm a little chatty in general. They're surprised. And I make it a point to tell this to Black women students that I mentor, right? Because it's really important. And I tell them in an effort to help them to find their voice really early, because I feel like it took me a little while. I would have liked to have found my voice a little bit earlier. And I've had that conversation a number of times with first year students about, particularly in the college that I teach in, that's very, it's a college that's geared towards, it's a public affairs college. So we have a lot of pre-law, aspiring politicians, aspiring, public service people, and lots of confident young white men, right? And I've had to just have that conversation, right? And talking about how we want to, haven't thought about what I would have liked to have early on, right? To have someone pull me aside really early to help me find my voice and to remind me that I have important things to contribute to the conversation. So I think that's really important as we are thinking about like where we are and the kinds of roles that we can play in helping young Black women in particular, as well as others, right, find their voice really early. And so that really stuck out to me and resonated with me to think about how many of us struggle with that, right? And the information piece, right? Because there's the lack, depending on where you come from, right? We don't all have access to the same information. And really working with others and, across communities, across sectors to help, each other to know what's out there and how we can also contribute. So one of the things that I heard that you all mentioned, I know Dr. Khaldun said, was a Black male mentor pulled you aside. But what were your other sources of being able to find your voice, as well as helping you to just, along your career? What were those entities, people that helped along the way in terms of helping to build your success?
Actually, for me, failure helped build my success. After almost going out of business during the recession, I realized that it was totally up to me to really step out on faith and either go get a job or rebuild a business. And I was lucky because the energy efficiency legislation had just passed. But it was, I'll never forget, the end of 2014, I realized that one of the reasons I had not been as successful, the main reason, to be honest, was that I was not willing to develop the deep relationships. You all talk about mentors and sponsors and partners. And again, it was just my natural inclination to do things for myself, by myself. And I really want to discourage women from feeling like they have to do it all, because we can't. We hurt ourselves when we try to do that. And one of the things I really want to offer is just the importance of intergenerational relationships. Women like myself who are toward the end of our careers, there's nothing more important to me right now than keeping sisters, young or old, from going through the same things that we went through to get that modicum of success. One of the reasons that I take these panels so seriously is that just the privilege of having a platform to speak is fairly new for Black women. And it's really important that we speak truth and we don't sit up here and say we're here because we just got it like that. We just that bad sisters, because we're not. We're blessed. We have the privilege of a platform, but it comes with the obligation to listen, to talk about our scars, not just, how cute we look tonight, really, what did it take for us to even get here? What have we been through? Because that's what encourages me, not seeing that you are all that, but knowing that, I love to tell people that 5 years ago, I was $250,000 in debt and crying at night. I love to tell people that because that's what encourages. That's what lets women know that they have the option of building multi-million-dollar businesses, even though they're having trouble putting one foot ahead of the other right now. That's what women need to hear. That's the kind of support I needed at the time. And that's the kind of support so many women need. We need to know that we can and that we're going to be okay through all the craziness.
I agree with Carla. You are right on. I have to say that for me, I think about what I've done and continue to do, and that is to identify folks who are trusted advisors and who I am able to reach out to, not just when things are going great, but being able to connect with those individuals. I call them my kitchen cabinet. When I am particularly when I'm dealing with difficult issues and don't know how to respond. And I mean, and it happens to all of us. I mean, it could be, a super complex project that you have and you just don't know where I'm headed here, or politics or team dynamics or race or gender. And so being able to reach out to individuals that you can trust, that they're trusted, and that will provide you with that important advice and counsel is so important. And figuring out at the end of the day, how do I make it work? How do I move forward in sometimes situations that are extremely difficult? And some of the advice that was given to me and that I still follow today is, number one, what did I learn? What happened and how did it happen? So what did I learn? What could I have done differently? Sometimes you just messed up. Mistakes happen, and taking the importance of taking responsibility, which demonstrates character and leadership. I think also, and I think the final piece, and this is information I constantly would share with my daughters, is giving yourself grace and giving others grace. Because at the end of the day, no one's perfect. Things happen. And as you think about how you go throughout this life, it's just important to know that when, just putting your best foot forward, being able to be intentional in terms of how you're doing, what you're doing, and again, surrounding yourself with those trusted advisors, I have found has been my lifeline, and far too often that I would even care to admit. But I would say the bottom line, after you get to the point where you've done your analysis, you've determined, you've learned your lessons, you've reached out, you got to figure, as you move forward, you just figure it out, do the best you can, and then you move on.
And maybe I'll just add to that. A lot of people ask me, Dr. Khaldun, I want to do exactly what you're doing. Tell me what year, what degree do I need? What job did you have? And what job did you have after that? I'll be honest with you, 10 years ago, I had no idea that I would be doing. I didn't even know what this job was. I didn't know what it meant to be in public health or doing anything I'm doing today. But I'll tell you what I did have 10 years ago was a really good mentor, a female woman of color, not African-American, an Asian woman actually, who told me, Joneigh, you just need to always think about the type of work that you want to do, not the job title, but what is the type of work you want to do? How do you want to feel doing it? And what type of people do you want to be working around? And I just was very intent on thinking about that, and just opportunities would come up. I'd say, yeah, that sounds interesting, or I'm excited about that. Let me volunteer. Let me come to that meeting. Let me see how I can be helpful. And then I ended up where I am today, at leading the state's COVID-19 response. Again, had no idea I'd be doing that 10 years ago. But I think it's about doing things that you're interested in, being okay, not knowing what your next step is. I think also not chasing degrees. You don't have to get a particular degree to do work that you love. The experience and the journey is very important as well.
I'll just add, I've taken something from probably each one of you, what you said. So I certainly have had an experience that has been life-changing for me. I think I was working so hard, I put my head down, and I thought everybody was going to recognize and realize how wonderful all the work I was doing was. And I looked up one day and everybody around me was getting promoted and I wasn't. And I was trying to figure out, what is it? What am I doing wrong? What's going on here? And I had to take a step back and really think about who I was and what I brought to the table, and recognize that if those that I was working for did not see my value and did not recognize who I was, it was time for me to move on. It was time for me to find a new path. And that took a lot for me. From a risk perspective, I'm in finance and banking, so we balance risk, but I'm not really about risk. But it was important for me to take the opportunity to take a real strong look at my career, take a look at where I wanted to go, what pathways, what was important to me, and step out and find out where I needed to be. And I have found that in doing that and taking a step back and looking, I am so much happier in the career and the space that I'm in, because I was willing to go out on a limb. They say that's where the fruit is. And sometimes you really do have to step out and try to figure out, what is best for you, and not necessarily worry about those around you trying to promote you. You have to do a little bit of self-promotion. I think we as African-American women don't do enough self-promotion. It's okay. We can still be humble. We can still be great, but we do need to promote ourselves. When you look around, our white male counterparts are certainly willing and able to do that. They'll take on opportunity jobs that they may not have all the skills for, but they'll go out and try and take it on. And we as women don't necessarily, we want to check every single box. But it is extremely important for us to do that. And I was also able to do that through my mentors. I have some really great mentors that I was able to lean in on and gather advice that provided me with information that helped me to make great decisions for myself.
Thank you. And I just want to remind, we're already talking about challenges, and I just want to offer some context for the audience. So we know that everyone of all backgrounds, right, will have potential to experience challenges in their career path. Women in particular of all backgrounds have to contend with larger patriarchal structures. However, when we're talking about challenges for people of color, and in particular for Black women, we can't disentangle, right? When we have a struggle or we have a challenge, from the fact of larger social barriers and larger social structures. And we can't help but to sort of question ourselves, is it me, right? Or is it the structure? Where is it? How can I intervene, and how much power do I have here? So some of the things that I'm hearing from the panelists is us being able to take ownership where we can, even in those moments of, as Carla talked about, failure, or those moments of, having to take a second look and pivot, as Alexis was just talking about. What am I doing? What do I need to restructure? And so I just wanted to offer that for the audience as we're talking about this, so that, there might be a conversation like, we all face these things. Well, as a Black woman, right, the particular flavor of our challenge might be a little different. So, and with that, I also just wanted to throw in, we can still continue on this line of conversation. Now that you are firmly rooted in your success and your field, do you still deal with that doubt sometimes? Who are the, is it internal? Is it external? And how do you navigate that?
I don't deal with doubt nearly as much, because I just recognize the humanity in all of us. I'm so clear that, as Faye said, we all make mistakes, we all require grace. And I think that I am much more forgiving of other people, and I've learned to be more forgiving of myself. I've learned to celebrate the times that I'm goofy, and the times that I'm wrong, and the times that I've had to learn things the hard way, because it's just happened. It's just happened so many times now that I don't take myself as seriously. But I do take, as I said, the obligation to really speak out when it's not comfortable. One of the things that I think we probably all have in common is that we're in rooms that I'm in rooms today that I didn't even know existed. And a couple of the rooms I'm in today, I'm not going to lie when I say, when I finally fought my way into the room, I got in there and I'm like, oh, you're here? You knew this room was here? And I had to fight my way in? Why didn't you invite me? And we have to invite people of goodwill, people who are capable, people who are just good people into these rooms. I think that sometimes we feel like everyone has to be so perfect to be invited. One of the things I say to companies that are trying to diversify their boards, white men are literally on well-compensated boards today because they were the college roommate of someone or the golf buddy of someone, and that was the requirement. But when these same boards are looking for Black women, we have to be so stellar. We can't just be great, capable assets. We really have to have run some stuff and leaped tall buildings to get on these boards. And that in and of itself is inequity. We should require the same thing of Black women, of capable Black women, that we require of white men. And we can't perpetrate that. We cannot continue to do that to each other. Because we've made it, we can't require that we only recommend women who are where we think we are, right? We need to recognize raw talent and goodness and capacity and capability and empathy and invite them into the rooms.
Go ahead, Alexis, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I do sometimes still feel a certain level of self-doubt, and I'm certainly a little younger in my career. But I do feel that. And the reason I feel that is because I feel an enormous amount of responsibility for those coming behind me. I feel like I have to perform at a top level so that I can make sure that those coming behind me have the same opportunity. And I still feel like at times people were saying, oh, we gave her a chance. Oh, she messed it up. So when the next person comes along, they're like, we tried, it didn't work. And I certainly still feel sometimes a little bit of uneasiness because I want to make sure that I'm creating and making sure there's a pathway, just as those that have created pathways for me, I want to make sure that that's there for those that are coming behind me, and as many opportunities as possible, particularly when I think about the opportunity to provide capital and to lend out money. This is not a space that you see African-American women in very often. And I want to make sure that I see as many of us in the future as possible, but I also want to make sure that we're making good decisions about the capital. So it's a complete and total balancing act. So I just, I want to have that honest conversation.
Well, I think too that, for sisters who are way ahead of you, far ahead of you in terms of length of career, it's certainly, for me, I don't deal with doubt at this point in my career, but I deal so much with purpose and wanting to make sure that at the end of the day that I am purposeful in terms of what I do and how I do it, and making time to support my young sisters who are coming up behind me. So, it is that purpose and that focus that inspires me, and that just makes me, it's a catalyst for what I do and how I do it and how often I do it every single day. I always think about not just what I've accomplished, and I've been, again, very blessed with mistakes and all, that here I am, right? And it's been okay. But I know that it is so important for me to share my learning, my experience, to be there, to listen. And that's where I am right now in the stage that I am as far as my career is concerned. It is what it is. So the doubt is it doesn't lead me. Purpose does.
And I just want to insert, Faye is way ahead of me where her brand is and her, who she is, right, in the ecosystem. And we keep talking a lot about young sisters, but I want to offer that opportunity has skipped so many older sisters, that the young sisters, I'm so happy that you are young during this time. I feel like this is for such a time as this moment. But I want to celebrate sisters like Faye, who reach laterally and try to give women of a certain age opportunities as well, because that's what we have to do. We can't, we have to recognize value at every age and every stage. And I appreciate her for that.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
I appreciate hearing both what Carla and Faye had to say. I echo Alexis's sentiments. Being where I am in my career, I still experience doubt. Part of the nature of academia is to always compare yourself and your work. Literally, that's how you get to tenure. Peer review is a constant, right? So you're always, it's rarely about, even if you're passionate about it, there's always, will they like it? Will they approve? And I've had to definitely grapple with that, right? And what it means to be my authentic self and be in academia, right? And still pursue the path that I want, right? And so I think that that's also something that as you, Faye and Carla, are talking, that I'm also sort of like trying to absorb by osmosis that that confidence and sort of, and as well as, being able to be my authentic self, even inside of these structures. And thinking about being at the table, I'm in academia, and I think one of the things about academia is that, there are more women. My experience has primarily been in sitting in spaces, especially I worked a year in administration where it was white women, right? And so that's something different to contend with, right? Because there's an assumption of sisterhood is universal, and it's not. That in my experience, it's not. And so what do we do with that when we are talking about making space for women and women's voices? And I know you mentioned thinking about affirmative action, Carla. One of the things I always, talk to my students when we bring up affirmative action, and we think about how that actually wasn't merely a race-based policy, right? That was about race and gender and white women have been such huge beneficiaries of affirmative action, right? So for me, in academia, particularly, and I guess it depends on what kind of university you've been at. Michigan State University, we have a lot of white women in leadership positions, which is awesome, right? But those are also places where I would like to see more women of color, more Black women who also are looking out for other Black women, right? Because there's also challenges of putting people in places just to say you've met a diversity, right? You have diversity, right? But they're not empowered to do the real work of inclusion. And so that was just those are some of the things I'm thinking about with what I specifically contend with, and the things that contribute to the self-doubt, right? When you're in a larger structure that purports to value you, but really does it in this really inauthentic way. And I don't know if anyone else has any of that, but.
Well, you just said a whole lot. And so one thing I will say is that we're all learning. And I've talked to more of my white sisters since this summer than I ever have. I'm happy that they are open to learn, but I think it's important that we share our experiences and our hard truths. The fact that as women, we go so far together, and yet Black women have to continue walking the path alone, where white women literally stop because they really have gotten what they need. And there's a lot to be said about how hard that last mile that we have to go, how very difficult it is. And so many of my white friends said, I didn't know. And I was able to say, because you didn't care to know, and because I didn't have the space to share with you. But now that you want to know, I think it's incumbent upon Black women to continue to have, we keep talking about hard conversations, but we need to keep having hard conversations and give people the space to become, to get to where they need to be. I laugh because as a Black woman, you would think I know everything about Black people and Black women. And sometimes my daughter says, girl, don't say that again. She's teaching me about the generational things, older Black women versus younger Black women. So we all just, again, go back to what Faye said about grace. We all have to learn. We're all going to make mistakes, but we all have to be willing to, to do the hard work.
I agree with you, Carla, just in terms of, that giving out the information and having the conversations and how critically important that is. I think that was part of me finding my voice just through some anti-bias and anti-racist training that I had. It just enabled me to find a way to have those conversations. And if we don't have those conversations, then they won't happen. It is extremely important for us to do that. As we talk about trying to help the next generation or trying to help those that are around us that need additional supports, if we don't have those conversations, then it won't happen. So it is extremely important for us to use our voices.
There's one question that I wanted to throw out there. Some of it has come up, but I wanted to speak to it a little bit more pointedly. And that's this notion of exceptionalism. So have you felt pressure of having to be exceptional to succeed as a Black woman? And I know this has come up. I know Dr. Khaldun talked about it. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add about that. And how do you navigate this notion of exceptionalism? And what advice might you have for Black women who feel this pressure, who are trying to navigate it themselves?
Now, I feel like I'm talking way too much. But I think we've all felt the pressure. I really do. It's exactly as Alexis said. I remember a time when I knew for a fact that if I failed, it would be used as an excuse for another Black woman to never, for the next 10 years, have this position. And so I do remember feeling that pressure. And we're not past that in many, many areas, in many business sectors, in many rooms. People still think that way. But I don't feel the pressure I don't feel the pressure of my race, but I absolutely do remember knowing that if I failed, I was really dooming that particular position for at least the next 10 years. But that's because people were willing to use that as an excuse. White men can fail all day, every day, and no one will ever say, well, we can't give another white man this job because you see what happens. So we're just in a different space where people who want to know better. And I think that we expect people to do better and not try to find excuses and reasons. I hope that we're at least moving toward that. I think that one of the most interesting things to me is how people are saying that history is being rewritten, and to make Black people look smart and like heroes and like we created stuff. And the point is that our history has never been written because we weren't writing it, because we didn't own publishing companies, and we weren't, our books weren't being published. And I think it's so important that we allow history to be corrected so that we can all learn how amazing Black people, period, just are, but allow the truth to be written and everyone to, just be allowed to accept the truth of who we are. That there's a correction being made right now, and everyone who's open to it should receive it.
I think that that's a good question to reflect on, Dr. Harrison. Throughout my career, I've always felt the burden of being exceptional, because when you walk in the room, you feel, you get those vibes that you don't belong. And so there's so much pressure that we place on ourselves to be exceptional, to be that strong Black woman. We can do it. So we're exceptional. You have to be exceptional. I know, younger in my career, being an exceptional lawyer, being an exceptional mom, always there, showing up. I was hopping planes every which way. I would go back and forth. For example, I had a project in DC and I was going back and forth, and I could have stayed a couple of days, but no, I'm the exceptional mom. So I had to take that early 6 a.m. flight to be home at 6 p.m. to be at that parent-teacher conference. Forget about the fact that my husband could have represented us well, but I had to be there. And so I have found that placing that type of burden on myself has taken me nowhere fast. You don't feel well physically, you don't feel well emotionally. And I think a lot of it has to do with, too, the question that was raised early on about, Black women being in the room, the representation of Black women. And it's just, it is so important that not only we see ourselves more in these spaces, when we are hearing more our voices in these spaces, but we're coming together more as women, as Black women, as women of color, sharing our stories, supporting each other, giving each other that sustainability, so that at the end of the day, we don't have to feel all the time that we have to be exceptional. So I don't know, if that will ever leave, that will ever go away. But I think that the more we connect, the more we, again, celebrate our sisterhood, the more we are sharing our stories, the more we're coming together, the more we're supporting each other, really is so important, no matter where you are in your career.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I think I'll just say, I talked about my earlier years and being in high school, but I think I've come a long way. I'll be honest with you. I don't even think much about it. I can be in a room full of a bunch of older, tall, white men, and I will speak up and say exactly what I think and why I think they're wrong, or what I think that the next step should be. I think to be honest with you, I've been through so much, whether it's my upbringing, going through medical training, having people look me in my eye and tell me, why are you doing that? Don't you think you should think about something else? Again, these are experiences that we all have, but I think it goes back to living on purpose. I think I'm quite confident at this point. I know I'm here in these particular roles because I have a gift, And I know that, I don't want to get spiritual and all that, but I know I've been placed here to do something in particular. And so for me to live in my purpose, I have to be Joneigh. And so, I just go around being Joneigh, the little Black girl with the afro that people see on TV these days. Never thought I'd be here, but I'm myself. And I think that's kind of where I am at this point in my life. And also, I also have 3 children. I don't talk about them that much, but I have 3 children, and I've realized that, sometimes I'm not going to be at every game, and it's okay. And they still love me. They still write me notes about how I'm the best mom in the world. And I think it's about having some grace for yourself as well, and knowing that you are good enough, and you're in these spaces because you're supposed to be.
Amen. And you don't want to get spiritual, but I do, because I really believe that this is for such a time as this moment. And I think we're here for a reason, and that we are, again, obligated to fulfill our assignments and use our voices and not squander the opportunity that we have right now. This is for such a time as this moment, and we have to walk into it.
Yes, I echo that. I had a friend texting me earlier that was just telling me she couldn't log on because she had another obligation. And I was like, oh, no problem. And I said, I confessed I was nervous. And she gave me a pep talk that mirrored what you just said, Carla, that really just talked about, like, this is part of your purpose. This is like who you are, and, the kinds of, in talking to people. And I think that there really is, in us moving towards thinking about how we sustain ourselves and what gives us joy, right? In knowing that, as much as I have my doubts, there is that spiritual component of knowing there's purpose and knowing that there's a gift that I have, even in those moments when I'm feeling insecure about that, right? I know that I can reach, students, and I'm an avid mentor, and right, and I'm here for a reason, right? In the positions and have access to the resources for particular reasons. And so I deeply appreciate that. And so if anyone else can jump in and continue on this line, but I also want to add in the question of, in thinking about this, how we go about taking care of ourselves. I know Faye started the whole, how we, try to being the strong Black woman, but how are we taking care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and who are sources, or where are sources of encouragement and support?
So let me begin by saying that, as women, we just run hard. We run hard for our families, for our employees, our team members, we just run hard, and we work so hard to get it right. And I think as we're doing all of this hard work, that there is one person oftentimes, or far too often, that we forget about, and that's ourselves. And so I just think it's not a magic formula, that it's extremely important as we think about putting together that strategic plan, right? I got your annual strategic plan going. It's my quarterly objectives. Even when you get up and you put together your daily priorities, it should always begin with ourselves. And again, not rocket science. This would be pre-pandemic, right? In that, scheduling time for friends and family and vacations and all of that. But even more so because of COVID, I think, if anything, it's shown us just so much the importance of self-care. And, I have found that you really can't separate your personal and your professional, and that if one side is off balance, the other side is ultimately going to be off balance too. So I just find that when I take my own advice, I am a much better everything. I'm a much better person, a friend, I'm a boss, or just a mom, or just being good to me. I know is something that I have to talk to myself all the time about. But it's just so important to begin with self-care.
Anyone else?
It's important. Yeah. I haven't cracked the code on actually achieving it yet, but I do a much better job of encouraging my girlfriends, family, and loved ones to take care of themselves. And I'm learning. It's a journey.
Hey, so I've got two quick quotes by my favorite Maya Angelou. So she says, here's one: nothing will work unless you do. Isn't that deep? And the other one is, if I'm not good to myself, how can I expect anyone else to be good to me? So we got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I believe in giving and giving back and walking in my purpose. And I know that if I don't take time out for myself, I can't give of myself. I can't give all the gifts and talents that I've been blessed with. So I have learned that it is that I have to take the time out. I have to take the time away. I have to sit back. I have to give myself quiet time so that I can give the best of myself, because I can completely see when I don't take that time out, when I don't give time for myself. Exercise, running has been something that I picked up, over the years. And it has been the thing that I can put my shoes on no matter where I am and go out and just unwind. So I would just encourage, no matter what it is, for everyone to find something that allows you and enables you to unwind, whether or not it's meditation, whether or not it's, yoga, whether or not it's, playing with your kids and laughing really hard, but to really let go and let loose, so that you can give the best of yourself.
Yeah. Oh, God.
No, I would just add to that. As a physician, I feel like I have to chime in too and say something. but I'm still working on it myself. But for me, it's about trying to do things that are simple. I mean, sometimes in the morning, I just spend 5 minutes stretching, or I'll spend 10 minutes just reading something that has nothing to do with COVID-19. Just something. I think sometimes we make it so complicated, and it has to be that you got to go to a class, or now it's online classes for the most part, but it doesn't have to be something very major. Just a little bit every day, taking time for yourself and taking care of yourself is really, really important.
And the other thing that I've learned along with that, obviously taking care of myself, and I have a toddler, a 2-year-old, almost 2.5-year-old. So that is what it is. So I'm always tired. But there's also, I understand that, I love that, the quotes that you pointed to, Faye, in thinking about taking care of yourself, or, if you won't work, what was it? If you don't work, I'm sorry.
Let's see, nothing will work unless you do.
Unless you do. Yes. And so, and for me, I think also there's finding that thing that you work harder for and what motivates. And for me, it's my son. And so I know that taking care of myself, I started in grad school, and during my dissertation, I also started running, Alexis. And that was like everything to me. And I fall off sometimes, but some kind of movement, right? I'll find I'm doing something else right now, but right, there's movement for me is really important. And I noticed that when I do take those moments, I'm such a better mom, right? I have more patience, right? I really enjoy playing with him and imagination play and all of that, all of those great things. And I find a sense of groundedness in those moments. And so the learning, I'm guessing that this is a lifelong process to remind ourselves to take care of ourselves, but in taking care of ourselves, to understand that that's because we need to take care of these other folks, or want to, depending on our family structures and things like that. So that's just so important. And as a fairly newish mom, that's been such a huge lesson for me over the last several years. So I have another question. Well, how do you define success? So it's taking care of ourselves. And I think that some of that is embedded in the things that we're talking about. But, when really, given that question, how do you define success for you? It's a hard question too.
Yeah, I think I redefine success every year or periodically, right? The things that I thought were success a few years ago just aren't the same things. And once you achieve certain things that you thought were success, and it's really complicated. Again, I'm in a different place on my journey. And for decades, literally, success was my children and my mother being okay, right? And I buried my mother and my father. So success just means something different to me. For me right now, success is financial comfort, but also peace in my heart. It really is just spiritual calm. And I, especially during this time of COVID and with so many terrible things happening every day, then I have to work. I have to work very hard at that. And some days are more successful than other days, but every day on this earth is, at this point, is a success to me. So.
I agree. Success today is are the blessings that I'm very grateful that I've received in terms of my health, my family, my children, my very close friends, and just simply blessings. You know, it is a blessing, for example, to have economic security when you know that there are so many other people who do not have, you know, who are food insecure, who have lost their jobs. And so I think that, you know, again, in reflecting, as Carla has mentioned, this pandemic, it has really grounded me so much in the sense that at the end of the day, if you have your health, if you are, you know, lucky enough to have your loved ones and you surround yourself with being able to have good friends, your family, that for me is success.
I think life itself, I mean, I can't think of through 2020, you know, the ability to still be here. At first, when the pandemic started, I was, you know, I can't do this, I can't do that. I was, you know, stuck on that. But then I started to reflect and remember on all those that didn't have all the things that I have. And I have everything that I could possibly need. Maybe there are some things that I want, but I have everything I need. And when I think about success, that's success to me. When I look at my beautiful daughters and where they're headed in their lives, and I think about, you know, the opportunities that I have, that's success in life. You know, just the opportunity to continue to breathe and continue to help others.
Yeah, I think similar to what's already been said, for success for me is just being able to get up every day and do my best to serve others. You know, I don't know what I'll be doing 20 years from now, 10 years from now. I really don't know. But if I have my health and I can get up every day and have the opportunity to do my best and have my family, I think I'll be okay and happy. So that's success for me.
Yeah, and I'd echo some of the things that have been said already. And I just wanted to offer some observations of the ways in which the past year, right, has really shifted a lot of people I know in their personal lives and thinking about things like success and just what we value, right? And I'm hoping that it really shifts at a more, you know, at a larger, at a more macro level, right? And thinking about what we value in society, right? I know, Carla, you talked about like good people, good hearts, right? and in our quest to move forward. And those are the things that, for me, also define success. Moments when I'm able to, I recently joined a research project and it's just like good people, and I was worried about the workload, but I really liked the people, right? And so that was part of the reason, that was the major reason why I stayed on. And I don't know how, in academia, I don't know how to explain that to everyone, right? Because that's not a value that you're supposed to think about in making these kinds of decisions. And it's something that I've definitely been reflecting on more and more, even over the past year with everything going on. And, I'm sure all of us have stories about the ways in which it's personally impacted our communities, people we know, our families, in terms of the health pandemic. And so I just want to acknowledge that, I know all of society, but the ways in which it's really hitting and reshaping our communities is significant. So I also want to point out, it is 8:22. We have 8 minutes left. And so I was trying to figure out like a good sort of like, how do we go out? I feel like, first of all, there have been so many nuggets that have come out over the past almost hour and a half. Good nuggets of just things to think about and things to reflect on. So we talked about how do we define success, but I really do like this other question that we had about celebrating ourselves and our peers. Like, how do you celebrate yourself and you can talk about others, but I really want to know how you celebrate you, because I think we got it down on how we can help others and mentor others and celebrate our families and our children. What do you do to celebrate you?
I have one thing, and I I have 3 children, and when I started having my kids, I started calling my mother on my birthday to say, "Oh my goodness, thank you for all that you have done for me." So on my children's birthdays, I do celebrate them, but I also think about me and what I think I'm a great mother, and I think I'm a great example for my children, and I carried these babies for 9 months and birthed them all and breastfed them all, which was a blessing as well. So I celebrate myself on my children's birthdays.
Yeah, I'm a natural hypersensitive introvert. So celebrating myself is not a really big thing for me, to be honest. But to be honest, I just feel celebrated. I feel that I do use the word traumatized when I talk about my corporate journey and then my struggle to rebuild my business. And I feel every time someone talks to me about the pride I must feel, then I really do. I can't get past gratitude. I feel so grateful every single day because there's so many women that I know personally who are smarter than I am and who are, to be honest, just great people. And one of the reasons I feel so blessed is I do feel favor. I feel that God has granted me a level of favor for me to be where I am. And I celebrate my parents, especially now that we're talking so much about the racial justice struggle, the things that they went through to just set a foundation upon which we could build and we could have some success. What we go through is nothing compared to the foundation that they laid for us. So I celebrate our ancestors. I celebrate my parents. I celebrate my peers. I just celebrate all of us because I feel really blessed right now.
Well, there's so much to celebrate. And, I join my colleagues here on this panel this evening and just being able to first and foremost celebrate the opportunity that we're having this conversation. It's so wonderful and informative and uplifting. And I also just celebrate all of the tremendous blessings that have been bestowed on me. My children, my grandchildren, my husband, just being able to be here in the now, being able to reach out and know folks I can touch when I need them. They're there, who give me strength and, able to sustain me when times are not so easy. And so I celebrate. I celebrate my life. I celebrate, I just simply celebrate being in the now today.
I was sitting here thinking when you asked that question, how do I celebrate myself? Do I celebrate myself? And I was really struggling with it. I know that I love to celebrate my friends. I love to celebrate my children. I love to celebrate my family and all of their accomplishments. And I said to myself, do I celebrate? But yes, I do. I celebrate my birthday. My birthday to me is my day. It is the day that I arrived. It is in the summer. I do not work. I try to be as close to some water as I can. And I would say that that is the day that I choose to do whatever it is that Alexis Dishman finds to be important on that day. So I would say that is the day that I celebrate. But I really think it's important to take time to do that. So I'm happy that we had this conversation today about it, because it certainly makes me reflect on whether or not I'm celebrating the things that I'm so proud of and so thankful for, that I've been a part of.
This is so great. I also struggle with celebrating myself, and I have a good friend who always reminds me to celebrate myself on my birthday, because I don't know what it is. I have a thing. I'm trying to get over it. I'm sure it's something deep. But one of the ways that but it's something I'm conscious of. So I've tried to make concerted efforts to take moments to give myself, you did a good job there, right? And really celebration comes in quiet moments and doing small things for myself, particularly grounding things. So I echo what you talked about, Carla. I celebrate my ancestors. I celebrate my family. My family's in New York. My mom, I think she's on now. Hi, Mom. Hi, Mommy. So it's really, I'm really thankful for my family. I'm so thankful for my friends. I have a nice cadre of sister friends that remind me who I am, remind me to celebrate myself. And they have been just solid. I don't know how I would have gotten through all the things without those circle of friends. So I echo some of the things that have been talked about, but also I'm just first of all, just grateful that we've had this panel. I celebrate you all. You are some I just loved being here tonight with you all. It's just amazing to, first of all, just think about the fact that there are these like common thoughts and experiences, but also that there are just so many, there's still so many possibilities, right? Even as there's still so much work to do, right? And so I'm grateful that we were able to have this panel to, first of all, showcase the possibilities, as well as hopefully inspire some people to really see that, there are ebbs and flows to this thing, right? But that success, grounding, really celebration are things you can find and cultivate, right? In the spaces that you're in, both professionally and personally. So I just want to thank you all for being authentic tonight and sharing. And again, thank you to Michigan Forward. Thank you to the Michigan Women's Commission for having us on tonight. Thank you so much. We're just grateful. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. Yes. And I just would like to wish everyone a good night.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
This was great.
All right. Thanks, everybody.